Fantastic. Okay.
We're live.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar session. It's been long since we interacted with all the women learners from the course. Today we have Professor Suresh and Pradeep. Before we go to the session, sorry. Sorry, I think it's been so long that we did webinars that I had lost my controls. So sorry about it. Before we go through the session, I just want to make a quick announcement regarding the assessment scores and the certificate. The scores are getting uploaded in the platform, and between today and Sunday, you will start seeing your lean canvas and video pitch scores. And probably by Monday or Tuesday, you will also receive, those who have got 60% and above will receive online certificates. We will send emails once the certificate process is generated so that you are aware of it. Now over to Professor Suresh for a short message to women entrepreneurs and introduce Pradeep too.
Hey, hi everyone. It's nice to be back. Not that I see most of y'all. I've never seen any of y'all, but I guess in a way we always been having these sessions. I thought since results were getting a little delayed, I always wanted to have Pradeep interact with y'all because of multiple reasons. I just, if I say anything, that'll probably be giving away too much. First of all, thanks. So many ideas. You're making our life very, very hard. I guess, the team, the mentors, everyone are just listening to these almost unending submissions that y'all have made. So in one way, it's pretty good that we see this kind of action from y'all. But then the other side is we don't have fungible resources that we could ramp up just because there are lots of submissions. So good to see so many submissions. I just wanted to say one thing before I introduce Pradeep. Don't worry about those marks, right? They don't mean anything. Somebody gets 80, another gets 90. It doesn't actually mean anything. These are just some random numbers. It could just be what the mentor was feeling at that point of time while he or she was going through your adventure idea. I keep telling our students as well all the time, saying that I should get 2 marks here, I should get 3 marks there. I say it doesn't matter. Even if I give you 4.0, which is the highest, it's not as if the venture that you're going to start is going to become a unicorn. Or if I give you a 0, that doesn't mean that the venture you're going to start is going to be a failure. It doesn't mean anything. These are just the way in which that you're presented, that you've interacted, the little things. These are just indicative that at that instance, you kind of impress somebody, or that instance, you did not impress somebody. So nothing to take to your heart because they really don't mean anything. So some number that you're going to get, it's just a number, right? Just go with it. Because if you look at all these entrepreneurs, the guys who are toppers or setting up ventures are not necessarily having it any better than those who barely passed and they're starting their venture. Both of them have the same level of difficulties. Both of them have the same level of gravity of like dealing with Banavara Road and the investors and things like that, right? So, yeah. So with that, I just would like to introduce Pradeep. Pradeep is currently a mentor in residence at NSRCEL. Actually, Pradeep was the first person that I met in Bangalore after I got an offer from IIMB as visiting faculty those days. I didn't finish my PhD as yet. And then I met Pradeep and a bunch of others at Kormangla Coffee Day, and they were planning Jyoti Niwas College Coffee Day. And we were all introducing, and I said, I'm in Bangalore because I'm joining IIMB. I'm an entrepreneurship scholar. So Pradeep said, hey, cool, I'm incubated there. So much before I met anyone at IIMB or anybody at NSRCEL, I met Pradeep. So I know him since those days. Well, I don't say those days, it wasn't really that long, 13 years ago. Yeah, so Pradeep was part of this wonderful venture, Map Unity. They were so Bangalore was not very happening as far as entrepreneurship goes. IIMB was the place where most activities in Bangalore for entrepreneurship were happening. And in IIMB, NSRCEL was where the activity was centered around. And one office that everyone used for all events on campus was MapUnity. So it was basically the main central nervous system for all the activities that we did in those days. I don't know if you remember, like people were dumping all banners in your office. I don't know what
People broke our
I
chairs
had to
as well.
say. Yeah, chair, everything. And it was like, the office doesn't exist anymore. We just broke everything down, sadly. But Pradeep's office, MapUnity, was where the central nervous system for just about anything. I think we even tried doing some telecast or something like that, right? As in they were doing. Yes, they were trying to do telecast and all kinds of crazy activities that Pradeep was involved with over the years that has been with entrepreneurship. He has been true to entrepreneurship, not to NSRCEL. He left NSRCEL onto because we eventually had to ask them to leave, right? So they didn't want to leave, as it is with everybody at NSRCEL. We finally had to say that no more. They stayed on for 2 years and said like, so they went out and ran MapUnity. Pradeep went on to do much bigger things. He's done wonderful experiments. He's back in Bangalore. The minute he was back in Bangalore, we were trying to appeal to him, saying that he should be at NSRCEL and start his his new venture from NSRCEL. We were so happy that he would be starting off from NSRCEL, and then COVID hit. So technically he's at NSRCEL, but hasn't been at NSRCEL, I think, since he signed up for his second innings at NSRCEL. He's now a mentor in residence. He's mentoring a whole bunch of startups. So yeah, Pradeep, thanks for having you here. Thanks for having you here again. And yeah,
look forward to listening to you.
Although I'll slip out, I'll come back. I'll be in and out.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Professor Suresh. I think that was very kind of you. I think that was a very generous introduction. Good afternoon to all the women entrepreneurs. Like I have been going through some of the submissions, as Professor Suresh said, man, like you folks are so much full of enthusiasm, passion, and energy that comes out in the videos that you have submitted, the lean canvas that you submitted. So hats off to all of you. And without further ado, let me just share my screen and walk you through like what I call as my journey. So I hope this will give you some perspective of what I have been through, and hopefully will give you some perspective on how you can go through your own startup journey. Right. So the title of the talk is called as "What's Your Problem?" Right. So as with every entrepreneur, you do face a bunch of problems in building your startup, right? Making it into a business, making it profitable, and then going really big, right? So one of the reasons why I said, hey, I want to talk about this is because the failures are pretty common in startups. So ask any VC, they will say, hey, I funded so many failed. Ask any incubation center like NSRCEL, they say, hey, we incubated so many, but so many failed. Ask many of your friends, they said, hey, we all started so many things, but so many failed. But there should be some learning from all of those failures. So I thought probably I'll talk about that today afternoon. And thanks again for your time, Trey. Right. So anyway, let's get going. Okay, my name is Pradeep Varadaraja Banavara. That's what Professor explained earlier. So this is brief story of my experiences with startups, right? So let's get going. And before I go deeper, I want you to read this slide. I'll just take a pause and allow you like 15 seconds to read through it. Okay, fantastic. I believe all of you have gone through that. So if in case you have questions, I believe you have a mechanism through which you can ask questions. So feel free to interrupt me and let's get going. So I'll be talking this in two terms. From the year 2000 to 2010 was the first phase of my career, where I did a bunch of things, ran a bunch of projects and startups and all of that. Like here are a few of them. Some of these are projects, some of these are companies, some of these are labs. And if you look at the total right side, there are about 46 different projects that I attempted between 2000 to 2010. Some succeeded, some failed, but most of them failed, right? So I have a lot of failures behind me. But the idea is, hey, there are some good learnings from each one of them, right? So this will be the first section of the talk, right? The next section of the talk is like 2010 to 2020. This is where I moved from being a startup entrepreneur into like joining corporates and doing a bunch of things there, right? We'll talk about each of these things as we go in, right? Okay, fantastic. So I graduated in the year 2001, and as they say, it was the best of the times and the worst of the times. I believe most of you know what is this. Essentially, in the year 2000, all of us had 4 to 5 offers. Like in campus, I was a typical engineering student, got a couple of offers. I was supposed to join Siemens in the year 2001, and then 2001 the dot-com burst hit, and that was the first recession, and then boom, all jobs were gone, right? So I ended up joining Karnataka government in part of their distance education, telemedicine kind of programs, right? So in the year 2000, everything was really looking good. All of us like had 3 offers, 4 offers in hand, because every company and their neighbor was coming into campuses and giving offers to students to say, hey, come join us next year, because hito.com boom, and then the balloon burst, and then we were left without jobs, right? So essentially, I started off my career into a recession, and the same thing repeated twice over, right? So in 2008 is when I started my startup, and that was the global slowdown. And 2020 February is when I started my new venture, and you know what happened in March, the pandemic came in. So there seems to be something to do with I starting something and the world having its own plans. Anyway, so the first project was the telemedicine project, right? So if in case you look at the concept was pretty simple. There is a satellite up there. You connect. This was like 2001, right? No 4G, no connections, and video conferencing was very tough during those times. So my job was to go to remote rural hospitals, set up these antennas, and set up that television and the camera that you see on the lower left corner, using which the rural patients were talking to doctors in specialty hospitals like Narayan Hridayalaya, and get their consultation in, say, hey, like how do they go about their treatment and all that stuff, right? And it was launched with a lot of fanfare, right? You see Kasturarangan, SM Krishna, Dr. Devi Shetty, all of them coming in and playing this. But unfortunately, the project bombed, right? It's not because the technology didn't work. It was basically there were some human issues in terms of, you'll not even believe me if in case I say that, hey, probably there is no mechanism to figure out who is going to pay for the diesel in the remote rural hospital, and those hospitals didn't have enough electricity, so they had to depend on generators, and those needed diesel, and somebody couldn't figure out who is a budget to which it would come. Secondly, there was no way in which the rural hospital doctor was incentivized to play a part, because the patients would come in and say, hey, I've talked to the Bangalore doctor, I don't want to talk to you, and naturally it created a whole lot of issues. So this thing bombed. So the second thing was, of course, ISRO launched this AGSAT. The idea was, hey, you bring in very, very good faculty and then get them to talk through this, and you have TVs and antennas across the state and the country, and the students listen to it. So my job was to go as usual, set up antennas, and I visited every about 117 engineering colleges in Karnataka physically, gone and set up some of these things and ran programs and all that. Again, it was a mixed bag. It bombed a big time for the engineering students, but it succeeded big time for the primary school students, mainly because the diversity of thought and opinion in the engineering students was much different than the diversity and thought from the primary students. Right. And of course, it was the same thing. So the solution is the same. The satellite is the solution. The problem is different now. So in this case, the problem was how do we do MTech counseling? So during those days, people had to travel to Belgaum, which is like North a city in North Karnataka, headquarters of the VTU, to be able to go select their seats for the MTech courses. Right. So we took satellite as a solution. We said, hey, how would we do remote counseling? We set up a center in Bangalore, set up a center in Belgaum, connected them to satellite, and then of course this was possible. This is like 2005, right? So pre WhatsApp smartphone days and all that. And hey, this satellite remote sense, the satellite video conferencing helped a lot of people save time because they could either go to Bangalore or Belgaum, which was closer, and then select their seat, which was like again through video conference. It worked pretty well. Right. So if you see the pattern here, the pattern is the solution is still the satellite, but the problems are different. Some problems succeeded, some are iffy, and some like they bombed big time. Right. So the next phase was, of course, I started off like we got incubated in NSRCEL in IAMB, started this company called Mapinity. So one of the things that we started doing was I was talking to Professor Suresh one day, and we were saying, man, we need to do something to get startups going big. So at the time, the biggest inspiration for all of us was the sale of YouTube to Google for $1.65 billion. And we're saying, man, Chad Hurley and our friends at YouTube made so much money. And then, hey, why is that India is not producing so much startups? We should do something about it. So naturally, during those days, there used to be this event called as Mobile Monday, which essentially brought mobile enthusiasts together on Monday evenings and discuss. So then we said, hey, when can we do this? And then we figured out that every second Saturday of the month is a holiday, right? It's a government holiday and all of that stuff. And then naturally, which means that the facilities of IIM were easily available. We said, okay, fine, let's do this. We'll call it a Startup Saturday. Every second Saturday of the month, we'll invite entrepreneurs to come in. We'll build a platform where come in, they talk about their problems that they're solving, and then pitch to people and get their feedback, validation, and all of that stuff, and let's see how does it go, right? So this program went so very well that hey, now it has grown just from being Bangalore's Startup Saturday. It has expanded to about 13 cities till last year, and this year I'm very very proud to say that this entire thing has taken a larger national shape. There are Startup Saturdays in 50 cities across the country, right? So this could be a very good platform for folks who are budding entrepreneurs or who want some validation, who want to be able to connect with other people in the entrepreneurship ecosystem to go be there and participate and get some good insights and all of that stuff. So most of the big unicorns that you heard today have come and pitched in Startup Saturday. So this has been an amazing story. And my only claim to fame is, hey, I gave the name Startup Saturday, but everything else was done by the amazing team, Professor Suresh, Amit, Harish, Kalol, Keshav, Arpit, a whole bunch of people, right? So Puneet, all of these people did an amazing job and grew it into an institution which is going really, really well. And there are a bunch of volunteers who are still running it really, really deeply. So here the problem is, hey, how do you help startups? How do you catalyze startups and all of that? So the same thing, we did something called a startup lunch. I'm sure all of you can recognize by the photos that, hey, this is again in IMB. We use MDC as a speed dating lunch or a speed lunch kind of mechanism. So the idea was in the morning, startups would come and give a pitch to say, hey, this is what we're building, here is what we're trying to hire for. And of course, you saw a bunch of candidates sitting in the open air theater waiting for their rounds. And during lunch, there are informal discussions where you could discuss, hey, how does this startup work? Why should I join you? And all of those kinds of things. And the founders are pitching to prospective employees. Prospective employees are trying to figure out which is the right startup for me and all that stuff, right? Amazing program, but unfortunately it bombed because we were able to run only one version. There is no sustainable way of running it. Whereas the previous one, Startup Saturday, is very, very very well established and then going, right? So in the meantime, then I moved into doing some other nonprofit stuff. We started this foundation called as Radicycle Foundation. The idea was to try and talk about cycling as a solution for traffic and all of that. So we thought, hey, what is the best way to do this? Like the Ganesha festival is around the corner. We said, okay, let us do a cycle Ganesha festival, right? And naturally, we were commercially successful because Decathlon gave sponsorship, gave some cycles, and said, okay, go do this and all that. The day comes and a whole lot of groups come in and say, hey guys, you can't commercialize Ganesha, close this thing, right? So yes, commercially it was successful, but hey, it didn't succeed in meeting the objective, which was like, hey, how do you get more people to get to cycle, right? So then we said, okay, fine, if cycle connection is not the right way, let us go and start working with the school. So we started working with a bunch of primary and secondary schools across Bangalore. The idea was to say, hey, to force government to realize that kids do not have a safe space on the road, especially if in case they want to go cycle to their home. So we did a simple competition. We said, hey, come in, write some essays, draw some paintings and all that. We got some like 1,500 people coming in participating. And we also had a huge rally. You see on the top right corner, kids like going on cycle and saying, hey, we want a lane to go in. Some parents were enthusiastic and some activists also came in. They said, hey, you know what, we need the lane. We started painting the lane on the road as well, right? And then the children also started doing really amazing stuff. But unfortunately, even though it brought in a whole lot of attention and interest, it fizzled out because, as you can see, there's no lane that takes a kid from his or her home to the school today. But then again, it was a campaign that it ran well and increased awareness to an extent. Right.
Pradeep,
So the next thing was,
sorry
hey,
to interrupt. Just one request. So participants are finding your pace too fast. Can you slow down a little bit because they are unable to catch your stories? You may have
okay,
heard this many or done this many times, but it's too
okay.
new for them. So if you could just reduce the pace, it would be helpful. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, fantastic. I'll reduce the pace, but you'll have to give me some more time because I had planned for 30 minutes at this pace. So probably we'll do 40 minutes.
No
Okay.
problem, no problem.
Okay.
I'm sure they'd be happy to hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I am afraid your Friday evening is going to be me, so please excuse me on that. I'll try and go slow, right? So the same platform, which was like, hey, like how do you get more cycling going? Was like we said, hey, how about we do a race? And we even invited Professor Suresh to come race. So if you see the bottom left corner, he came in and participated on the race. So this is, it has morphosized into like what you see as the top left image has become a huge event that runs year on year. So this is the 12th year edition, which is going well. Again, the same problem, like how do you promote cycling, but a different solution, right? So the solution here was try and get kids to do something. Here is like try and get a race. A race succeeded, that thing failed, right? So this succeeded really, really well. And third, like we said, hey man, we need to work really closely with the government. So we started working with BMTC to say, hey, can we have some cycling carriers on the buses, on Volvo buses and regular buses? Unfortunately, that failed. And then we went to the politicians to say, hey man, please help us get the lanes and all that. They were very keen, but they were not sure whether there would be enough people who were willing to support them on this. So naturally, we wanted to do a big thing. So we said, oh, woke up at 4 a.m. one day, just went and painted some of these roads and say, hey, these roads are going to be for cyclists and kids are going to cycle here and all that. But still, we are missing that critical mass of people who are coming in. So one of our friends suggested, hey, if in case we invite a film star, probably it'll help get more crowds. And naturally, thankfully, Pooja Gandhi agreed. So she's one of the leading Kannada film actresses. So naturally, she came in. Thousands of people came to see her. We got Mr. Ashok, the transport minister, during the time also coming to join. Of course, it raised a whole lot of awareness and all of that. But unfortunately, we got some lanes in and around Janagar. But unfortunately, even though we got the lane, there is nobody there. You see, there are lane markings on the top left. There are some cycle lanes in Janagar. Even now, you can see that. But unfortunately, nobody uses that. There are autos parked, car parked, and all that. So it's an iffy thing. Okay, so then we said we'll go into small campuses. Like we went to IASC, we said, hey, well, let us run it as a commercial program. Probably just calling it for public good is not going to help. So we set up the station. This is like 2011. And unfortunately, this also bombed, right? Because there are a whole lot of issues with redistributions, the commercial model and all of that kind of stuff. But then again, the idea was to say, like if in the case you look at all of the last 5 or 6 things, right? So the problem that we're trying to solve was get people to adopt bicycles, and we tried different things. We tried a commercial model, we tried a shared cycle model, we tried a kids model, we tried a race model. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. And then we also said, hey, we started working with Times of India to say, hey, how about we get a campaign to say time cycle to work. So this was a campaign where Times of India started encouraging people to cycle to work. We also got a large event that ran, so 5,000 people came in and cycled on the day, right? It was Outer Ring Road, Sajapur. Again, so the event worked well, but again, the activism didn't go well. right? Then we said, okay, well, how about we are just doing it here? We go across the South India and see what happens. So we created this event called as Tour of Nilgiris, which is essentially a 1,000-kilometer ride across South India. Basically, start from Bangalore, go to Mysore, go to Ooty, and then come back. And it's a 10-day ride, right? And it's tremendous success, right? So there is this competitive element. There is men, there are women. They come, like the whole lot of international people also come in and participate. It's very, very scenic. And it caught the fancier people, and it's going really, really well. It's like in the 12th year of running now, right? So this is all about the cycling stuff. So next was my own startup. So this was the startup we just called it Mapinity, and this was incubated at IIM Bangalore. So the thought behind the startup was mainly to say, how do you try and solve for traffic in like very, very big mega metropolises like Bangalore, right? So one of the thought that we had was people are making irrational decisions because they do not have good traffic information. So this was again 2006, 2007, when most of the phones didn't have, there were no smartphones, first of all. So even the biggest phones that used to come during that time would not have a GPS in them. So the proxy that we had was to try and look at the telco data to say how many cell phones are connected to any telephone tower at any given point of time, and then use that to calculate how many people are on the road. Because most of the people had a mobile phone, even though it is a feature phone, it connects to a tower, and then we are able to do all that. Then we are able to do some. So if you see on the top right, it's a map that shows how does the traffic look like. We also got access to the camera feeds from the traffic police. We also started working closely with the bus networks to be able to build. So this is in KSRTC in Mysore to say what is the ETA, when is the bus going to come, and all that. And we went to such an extent that, hey, we even had a huge board at MG Road, which would show the ETA of travel time from Trinity Circle to the old airport, because old airport was functional during that time, via Airport Road or via the Surendranath Road, right? So the idea was, if in case you get to see the Surendranath Road takes 13 minutes and the old airport road is jammed in 20 minutes, so probably you'll take Surendranath Road and like reduce the load on that. So the top left picture is I'm working with the traffic police there to fix the ETA display in Trinity Circle. So I think if you look through very, very long ago, people who've been in Bangalore, you'll see there used to be a huge LED board showing travel times, right? Again, here the technology worked, but unfortunately, as you can see, Bangalore still has traffic problems because our understanding of the problem was very, very naive. Because we simply thought, if in case we give information, people will make rational decisions. But what we missed out was, even though there is information, they're stuck because there are not many alternatives. Like everybody has to go to office at 10. So, and there are not many alternate roads. So you have to go to the same road. So it's an infrastructure problem as well, right? It is just not an information problem. But anyway, so technology worked, but the problem still gets solved. So I would say it's an iffy. Right, and then so that was the end of my the 10 years of the startups and various projects and all of that stuff. So now this is going to be very quick. This like I just moved into the corporate world. I started participating in some of these hackathons by Yahoo, and naturally I won them back to back. After the third win, they said, "Man, you are winning too many things. Why don't you come join us?" And fortunately, I got a job in there. And naturally, I like playing around with technology. And there is no clear problem per se to say, hey, this is what exactly needs to be solved. Then I realized, hey, there is this group called as Yahoo Developer Network. Their job is to go talk about technology and enable other people to solve problems using technology. So I had this opportunity to go travel to all IITs across the country and ran this hackathons there, right? And got the students to build good technologies with some of the Yahoo APIs and all of that stuff. So this essentially was tremendously successful because here I was able to bring my love for technology and work with interesting people who were trying to solve things, maybe with some of the technologies that we had, right? So the problem here was people already trying to solve something and they need technology, and I was helping them with that. And during that time, there was also this huge wave of social media and social apps. So one of that was Foursquare, right? So naturally, like I went berserk on that. Because if you remember, I had this background of doing some mapping earlier, and then I said, okay, I'm going to check into all kinds of places. So checked in all kinds of things, right? So much so that I even got a badge for 1,000 check-ins. And this, like, hey, you would have visited like 1,000 different places and said, hey, I have done this, right? So, but my proudest moment was when like I have done so much walking to do all the check-ins that Foursquare said, hey man, you walked all of India. right? So I didn't plan for this. It just happened because I loved mapping. I loved going, visiting places and checking in. But then again, hey, I got this badge. I'm very proud of that. But what happened to Foursquare? Yeah, they didn't succeed as a business. They're still doing well in terms of providing places, APIs and some SDKs to other businesses. But during their heydays, they were really, really big. But now I think they've become one of the other location providers out there. Right. So again, I would say I had loads of fun, but as a the problem that they're trying to solve for to bring all places on a map worked partially, not fully. Then from there, I happened to move into Flipkart. I started running their data platform. And this was one very, very memorable part of my career because if in case, for those of you who remember, Flipkart did this first big billion day and it was a major, major deal, lots of money spent on ads and all of that. And Snapdeal used to be really big during those days. They also started spending money. Amazon also started spending money. And the entire nation was waiting for Big Billion Day, and Big Billion Day starts and the servers start crumbling because of so much load. And by 10 a.m., hey, the entire site is down. And if you folks remember, Binny and Sachin had to issue an apology saying that, hey, sorry guys, we screwed up and we'll make it up better. So that's when the Big Billion Day became Big Billion Day. So the next year onwards, instead of doing it on just one day, they expanded it to like few days so that, hey, there is a spread out demand and all that. And if in case you go by the news now, they're doing it very, very successfully, like 115 orders per second or something like that, going by the latest press release. But it's pretty amazing, right? So if you look at the bottom left image, it looks pretty odd. Like, how does this fit into this entire picture, right? So this is a very interesting story about the human psyche. So a whole lot of people had anticipation to come the Big Billion Day and buy some stuff and get some cool deals, right? So one of the cool deals at the time, I think, if I recollect right, was you could buy I think, a pen drive for 1 rupee, right? And who doesn't want a pen drive at 1 rupee, like 2015, 16 times, right? Pen drives were the rage. So they came, they tried, and naturally it was out of stock or the website didn't work. And they felt so bad. But the problem was they had invested so much time waiting for Big Billion Day and spending in. They said, man, if not pen drive, let me buy something else. So they bought all kinds of things. They bought pillow covers, bed sheets, textiles, and all that, which was never planned, but naturally it was available. And I have wasted put in my time. I need to make good sense, and we got it and went in. So that was a humongous insight into customer psyche to say once you get them engaged, they will stay engaged because you promise them something and then they'll not go back until they get that, right? And again, the bottom right is the data platform work that we did. Like whenever anybody ordered something on Flipkart, the location would come up on the map as a dot, right? So within few minutes, you'll start seeing a map of India forming because that is the power of a platform like this. People across the country are buying stuff in near real time, right? So this is what that picture showcases. Again, amazing work by the entire team. I was able to learn a whole lot of technologies and all of that stuff, but was able to do some really big things, not necessarily. So I could have done much more, but I do have some gaps that I left. So good learnings, but anyway, I would call it as an iffy. So the next thing was Ola. Ola is an amazing company. This is like I joined them in about 2016. Amazing problems that they were solving. So I'm in Mysore currently. So if you see, the first one is the image from Mysore Dasara, where they're like having this Tonga, the horse carts for rent on Ola, right? And the top right is one of my very, very favorite memories. We launched Ola Micro. That was launched at 6 rupees per kilometer. Uber was providing rides at 7 rupees per kilometer. So this was the great cab wars of 16 and 17, where like not a day was left behind, where both the companies tried really hard to outdo each other and all that. And also did a whole lot of good stuff. Like when the Chennai floods came in, they essentially put the boats into action. When the demonetization happened, we even got ATMs into cars, so people could book a car. The car will come with an ATM. You were allowed to withdraw 2,000 rupees, so you withdraw 2,000 rupees, and then the car would go next and stuff like that, right? And then of course we tried a whole lot of selfie-based login kinds of things, won a bunch of awards and all that. Again, very, very good time for me. But then again, did I solve the problem fully? No, not necessarily. Okay, so the last part of my journey was I moved to Singapore. I joined this company called as Grab. They were like Uber and Ola in that part of the world. So naturally, here I got very good exposure to a whole lot of very, very interesting people. So we had offices in China, in Romania, in Korea, and like all across the region. Built some very, very interesting stuff. Built the maps from the ground up for deliveries, for logistics, for ride hailing, and all that. Amazing, amazing experience. Right here, we were able to solve the problem fully to say, hey, how do you navigate from A to B? How do you figure out the traffic on the way? All of that. So if you remember in Map Unity, I was trying to do estimation of ETA, and then hey, it didn't work because we just went with information and that we thought will solve the problem. It didn't. But here, I think we went the whole hog, and it was able to solve that. Right. So I would say, hey, I was able to solve that problem in this section. Right. So this has been my journey over the last 20 years, like 10 in startups and 10 here. Right. So I'll take a small pause and walk through two other small things. But if there are some questions, feel free to start asking them so that I can get them from Aditya and answering them. Okay. So the next thing is, imagine there is a problem. The problem says go map all places. Right. And who has the problem? Google Maps has this problem, right? Because they want to have accurate information of every place out there. So what did they do? They said, hey, you know what? For every location, I'll try and ask, put as much information as possible. So there is IIM, it says a business school, it says how far is it from where you are, it has opening times, closing times, and the website, and all that kinds of stuff. And then it also brought in a very interesting concept where they said, oh, it is very tough for us to be able to add images for all of these places by sending our own people. Instead, what if in case we crowdsource it? Right. So they created this program called Local Guides and allowed people to add images as they visited those places. Right. So here are some of the images that I have contributed to Google Maps. I'm a local guide level 7 right now. The first one is a boardwalk. The top right image is an image that I'm very, very proud of. I stood at the beach for almost like lots of minutes waiting for the right shot when the airplane and the sun and the beach would like align itself really well. Then I got that. Then of course I'm a foodie, so whenever I go to restaurants and all that, I like some good food, I take pictures and put them on. Right. And here is the number of views that each of these images have gotten. So rightfully so, because hey, getting airplane and the sun and the beach is really good. So you get like 44,000 images. And then food, of course, everybody has a different idea on hey, what like beauty is in the life of the beholder, right? So something like that. So the most interesting thing for me is this, right? So this is an image from one of the sagas on Outer Ring Road next to Manita Tech Park. And if you can guess the number of views it has, like I was myself mind blown. Right? It was like almost 300, almost like 400,000 views. And compared to all of the other images, this image looks there's nothing special about it, right? But still, hey, it goes in because probably a lot of people look at that, right? So what started off as, hey, let me go capture images, went on to something like this. And finally, hey, I'm very proud to say that, hey, man, I'm one of the top photographers on Google Maps, have like 2 million views on my images. But then again, 400,000 of them come from this Udupi Upchar, right? So such is life. You plan for some things, you do some really good stuff, but then again, you get rewarded in some other way, in some other things, right? So the next was imagine your problem is, hey, map all roads, right? So this was a problem that a company in Romania said, hey, we'll solve it by building an app called as Open Street Cam. The idea is very simple. You put a mobile app which uses the mobile camera to capture the road or the imagery of the road, and then hey, put it into the cloud. Computer vision comes in, it's able to look at all the street signs and then be able to build the road map. Right. So if you see the middle image, so the left image is me in my car with the app capturing the images. So if you see there are 3 or 4 mobile holders, because I try and capture as much as possible in different angles and whatever works at the time. So in the middle one is the map of Bangalore that I have been able to drive around and map. And of course, like I have like climbed the leaderboard in India for having contributed the most. Right. And so far I have been able to map all of this. Thankfully, I've been able to travel all the way from Bangalore to Chennai, to Pondicherry to Hampi, and then go around Bangalore, Mysore, and all that. So every day, whenever I get an opportunity, I drive around, do some small mapping, and do all of that. So far, I have been able to travel about 17,500 kilometers and be able to contribute close to 1 million images. It's like 967,000 images. It'll become 1 million images probably in another week or so. right? So the idea here is, if in case you look at a simple problem like, hey, map all roads, and how do you scale this? And you start looking at, hey, probably it is not going to be easy, it's going to be really tough, but one person can do all of this, which means if you're able to create a community, probably you will be able to do a lot much more. Okay, so given that all of these things, so I'll want to relate all of this into when you're looking at evolution of a startup, right? You have your ideas, you want to take it to the market, you want to do all of that. Like, how do you take some of these things as a structured process, right? So here is how I say this. I've called it as a 12-step plan, right? It all starts with a problem that you care about, right? You have a bunch of problems that you want to be solved. You are either personally facing it, or you're seeing people around you face those problems, right? And then you want to solve this for a bunch of people, right? So people who have the problem, so they essentially become your customers or your target audience. Then you go, hey, I'm going to build this. So how do you go about this is basically look at the processes that they're adopting, right? Like, how do they do it without your startup today, right? And naturally it could be inefficient, it could be bad, or it could be wrong. Like, so you say, hey, I'm going to reduce that inefficiency, I'm going to make that thing better, I'm going to make the process fine automated, or I'm going to make it far more convenient. So those are the stuff that you essentially build products that can help them to solve some of those processes, right? And to market this, you'll start making some promises to say, hey, you know what, if you use my startup or my product, you will save time, you will save money, it is going to be more convenient, it is going to be more efficient, right? You'll be more secure, you'll be more stable. Like, you have all of those kinds of things. I'll like make your life easy, all of this. So you start making promises. And as you scale, like, so you'll have to come good on the promises. So you'll start building policies, right? You'll say, hey, this is my returns policy, hey, this is my cashback policy, this is my customer care policy, this is my employee policy, and all of that. So that starts evolving. And then you realize that, hey, if in case you have partnerships, probably you'll be able to do this much better. So you'll start building partnerships with other players in the ecosystem, right? So that, hey, you are able to get more things out, and you are able to expand the range of offerings that you have, right? And once you have these partnerships, you want to be able to call out performance. Like, how do you know your product is delivering the desired objective, right? So, like, is it trying to solve the problem in the right way? Like, how does your product do? You'll start looking at metrics, numbers, KPIs. You'll have the GMVs, engagement, activation. Like, you'll have the funnel analysis, all of that interesting stuff that comes in, the DAU, MAU, all the good stuff that you require to look at performance. And then you'll realize that, hey, you have not only built a good solution, but it is slowly evolving into a platform, because the solution can do a lot much more than what you had initially intended to do, because partners will come and ask for some things, early customers will come and ask for some things. It has now become a platform, it can do much more, right? If you look at Razorpay, they started as something, and now there is very big platform that can do a lot many more things than what they started on, right? And then comes the question of possibilities. There'll be a whole lot of people who will use your platform to do things that you had never imagined that they would do, right? So this is going to be very interesting phase, where you will just be mind blown, say, oh man, my platform can do all of this, and people are bringing all of these interesting ideas. And of course, we all want the profit thing, like, that, hey, it is impactful. It could be a social profit, like you are making something good for the society, or it could also be the monetary profit, like you're making your shareholders, your investors, and your employees richer by saying, hey, I think we made money, and society becomes good as a part of that. And of course, if in case you've done all this well, then you have made a dent in the planet, and nothing like, hey, having been able to say that. All right. So typically, the people whom I reach out to, I ask them this, right? So what's the problem? Because everybody tries to say, hey, I am the startup, I am doing so and so. But the question is, everything boils down to this, right? Startups are here to solve problems, right? So all of us do have our own problems, but I just wanted to take that as a bait. I'm sorry, it's a switch and bait. We got you into the session, but the deal here is, if in case you have a very clear idea about your problem, then you have a ready-made way of going through the stuff. And I hope that some of the stuff that I've talked about in terms of why things didn't go well, or why things went well. So even though we had the same problem, there were different solutions employed. Some solutions worked really well, some didn't. Some went on to become businesses, some failed. In some areas, I was able to succeed a lot. In some, it didn't work, right? So the question is, as long as your eyes are focused on the problem, you can keep changing your solutions, and your startup, like people call it as pivoting your startup, right? the problem remains the same, but the question is, hey, you're pivoting from a solution A to solution B, or a different approach to solving the problem. So I would say, please fall in love with your problem, because the more you get deeper into the problem, the different kinds of solutions start emerging, and then it will help you grow your startup and get things going, right? Again, so the next set of question that I always end with is, hey, what's the problem, right? So please have clarity on what's your problem, and it should help you really well, right? I'll take questions. I have one more slide which I'll come to it at the end.
Okay. So thank you, Pradeep. Thank you for giving us so many insights and your perseverance, and whether it be a corporate or whether your own ventures. So there are a couple of questions from our participants, and one of those questions are from Shraddha Shetty. She would like to know the biggest learning from any of your past failures in the startup, since you have had variety of startups in diverse area, and how do you work on maintaining the focus?
Okay, so I would bring it down to two things, right? So one is there are two telltale signs that, hey, things are working or things are not working. So whenever you're working on a startup, right? So you usually try and build a small team. You work with that team and get things going. So one very simple test to figure out, are you on the right track, is everybody in the team trying to impress each other? So what will happen is, you will have an analyst, you'll have a designer, you'll have somebody is building a website, you'll have probably an operations person trying to do something on the ground. They come back to you and say, ma'am, I have cracked this deal. Ma'am, I have built this website. Ma'am, I have created this newsletter. Ma'am, I have done this thing. What do you think? Give me a feedback, right? So the more those people are doing, it essentially shows that, hey, they have bought into your idea, your vision of doing something in the startup, and then they're trying to impress you because they want to be a part of the solution that you are building, right? So this is a very, very simple sign to look at people around you to say, are they trying to impress you and impress each other? That shows that they are very, very engaged and they're trying to do stuff really well. Again, the other side of this is also, is when do you give up on an idea, right? Because you have put your heart and soul, you have built this from the ground up, like you've got a lot of people involved, and sometimes things are not working and you need to give that up, right? So of course you can look at, hey, metrics are not working as they are. You can look at, hey, the goals are not being met. You can look at, hey, this is what is happening. So I would look at what I call as an internal compass. You will have something like, just like employees are trying to impress you, you will have this, am I interested in doing this again today, right? So there is this interest level that you as an entrepreneur will have, and it's like a compass, right? It shows that, hey, you should probably go in this direction, you should not go in this direction. So after a while you'll say that, hey, probably this is not working, and combine that with the signs that others around you are not trying to impress you pretty much as well, and your own interestingness comes down, right? So this could be telltale signs where either you need to pivot, or probably in most of the cases what I've seen is probably it could be also burnout. You'll take a break, right? Or it could be you have set some goals that are probably unreasonable, like you have like set yourself up for failure because you said, hey, I'm going to do 100,000 in 1 month, and probably 100,000 should happen in 6 months. There are a whole lot of things that come in here, right? And unfortunately we get swayed by what our peers are doing, right? What the press is saying, right? Press says all kinds of colorful things because that's what people want to tell them to say, right? But the question is, hey, there is a lot much more stuff that happens beneath every story, right? So the idea is, as long as you are aligned to your internal compass and people around you are trying to impress each other, I think you should definitely go ahead. If any of these things start to falter, you need to take a break, ask a very hard question, and then figure out, do you want to continue or not?
Okay. And there's a question from Rachna. So she wants to know, how did your family support your initiatives given the variety of stuff you have done?
Oh man, I think without family, things would have been possible at all. I'm very, very blessed to have an amazing family. So my parents all through said, hey, live your life, do what you want, kind of stuff. That was really tough. And very interestingly, once I got married, I think my wife was very, very understanding. Like, this is very funny, right? When I started Mapinity of a startup, we were expecting, and we were like 4 months into our daughter's pregnancy, and My wife heartily said, "Hey, don't worry. I think you carry on, do all of this." And like 2 years in, like we are having major cash flow problems. She says, "Don't worry, I'll run the family through my salary." And I can't say enough thanks to my family and my wife. They have been my source of strength. They have been through all ups and downs. But then again, right? So here is a very interesting thing. Your family is a reflection of your energy levels. If in case you show very high energy to say, hey, this is working, this is making sense, they will usually reflect that, because initially in the first few months they are like slightly. So there are two types of things, right? So people who are who want to do it for the love that they have on you, and people see that, hey, I think you're doing something good, let's see what happens, and if in case it works well, then go ahead, right? So probably in the first few weeks, months, the love will wear off, and then they'll start asking hard questions. And then if in case you show enthusiasm, probably things go well. And during some of those very, very low days, it definitely helps to have a very, very understanding and accommodating family. Like as I said, hey, my wife helped me run the show for like probably a few months when things weren't going really well, and then she was the source of my strength. And till day she continues to do that. My kids continue to do that. It has gone to such an extent that during this lockdown, my kids started a startup in their own home because they were locked down. They couldn't do anything outside. So they started, they call it as Gaddis Packle. It is like, it stands for gardening, spa, and cleaning. They charge us like 2,000 rupees per month to do basic gardening activity and vehicle cleaning and all of that stuff. And they are very proud of their startup. They feel, oh, this is good. And I have captive customers, right? Me and my wife are captive customers. We have to pay them money. So they have their thing figured out. So it helps to have some of the, and again, the way to make this happen is you have to be transparent, you have to be truthful, you have to say, hey, this is what's happening, this is what I'm expecting, this is not what's happening, so that it makes a very, very easy conversation. So if in case you start hiding to say, okay, oh, don't worry, I'll take care of everything, then probably they will say, man, this guy's gone nuts, I don't know what's happening. Then they'll try to set up some intervention. Oh, uncle, please come and talk to him, he's gone nuts. Whereas if in case you have it fully transparent and open, it definitely helps. So that's what I've found. So again, your mileage would vary, but the idea is to be totally honest, truthful, and make them feel a part of the entire process. So even though they're not actively involved, they know what's happening and they can empathize with you.
Right. And then comes the finance part of it. So from where do you get the capital and manpower for all these ventures, and how do you bootstrap yourself?
So very interestingly, at least my experience has been that capital is the easiest to get. People are the hardest to get. Because when you say, hey, you are doing something out of your passion and you want to do this, money will find a way to come to you. Right? Trust me, like I have gone through, as I talked earlier, like 46 different projects in 2000 to 2010, right? Many of those projects are not abandoned because of a lack of money, right? The money is the last of the problems. So the trick is this, right? Whenever you're seeking for funding, if in case you are able to give a signal that you will continue to work on this problem, irrespective of whether the person funds you or not, right? That's a huge signal to them that, hey, you have fallen in love with the problem and you will be there here for some time. Because if you look at most of the people who put money into ventures, they want you to fall in love with the problem. And that's a typical thing that they look for. Are you falling in love with a solution? Then they will not fund you. But if you fall in love with the problem, then they will fund you. The reason is solutions can change, right? So what is the hottest technology today is not the hottest technology tomorrow. So I'm sure most of you would have read the story of Kata Book. They started as an SMS app, right? Which you read through SMS and do some stuff, and later they pivoted into something else, right? But the problem there was, hey, we want to do something in this Dukan tech or a retail area kind of thing is what they were looking at. And as long as you're glued to the problem, solutions can change, but the money will just come in. So people, I found it to be slightly tougher because as an entrepreneur, you have a whole lot of ownership on the problem and you have this attachment. You need to be able to convince others also with that energy, enthusiasm, and get them to see the larger picture. That's been a tough place, but finance, in my opinion, is not a tough place if you fall in love with the problem.
Yeah, and there's also one question from Meena. So when do you stop if things are not going well? So how do we take the decision?
Okay, so it depends on I wouldn't want to call it as an ROI, like a return on investment, because startups, in my opinion, is an infatuation initially, right? So it becomes a return on infatuation. So if in case you've fallen in love, then probably there will be tough decisions that you may have to take if things aren't going well. So we talked about the signals, we talked about your interestingness, your internal compass, we talked about are people around you trying to impress you and all of that stuff. But the deal is sometimes you will have to make that call. The way I have been able to do this is when there is something else that interests me more than what I'm doing with my startup. That is a first signal that probably something is wrong with what I'm doing, right? So let's say, hey, you're doing something, you read about, hey, somebody's doing something with Bluetooth technology, somebody's doing something with blockchain, or somebody's doing something on elderly care, somebody's doing something with child care, all those kinds of things. And suddenly you start, your interest starts peaking, and then you start spending more time. And then you realize that, hey, man, you had initially set out to do A, but now B seems to be more interesting. So that could be one area where you realize probably your mind is naturally inclining towards B, so it's a time to leave A and then move on.
Okay, I think we have mostly covered all the questions, and some of them were similar to what you have already answered. So anything, any other thing that Pradeep you would want to advise these women participants before the results are declared, and how to they really take on overall that?
Yeah, so I would just like to reiterate what Professor Suresh said. The marks and comments and selections are just happenstance, right? And trust me, like the reason I am also telling is like when our startup was incubated, that was when the Three Idiots shooting was happening. And naturally, like, hey, all of us very interested to see Amir Khan, Kareena Kapoor in the campus, and we went all around behind the crew, took some pictures, whatever, and all that. And then I realized, hey, man, it doesn't matter whether you are there outside or not. As long as you're not in the set, you do not belong, right? So similarly, what will happen is there are different people who have different views around a project, around a concept, around a problem, around a startup. So the judge may or may not have the right, because the judge just has the lean canvas and the video to be able to make a judgment. So what shouldn't stop you is what score you get, whether you get shortlisted, whether you get not shortlisted, all of this, because as long as you have love for the problem that you're working on, everything else is immaterial, right? Like I would not be wrong if I say that there have been tons of entrepreneurs who have had numerous rejections and still done amazingly well, right? So of course I don't want to name all of them, you know that much better than me, but the deal is please stay grounded to your problem, right? So what you have say provided to NSRCEL as part of evaluation is one of the solutions to your problem, right? So as you spend more time with the problem, you will probably come with better solutions, or you'll realize that, hey, your solution itself is really awesome, and then you go ahead and make the world a better place, right? So please stay put on the problem. Don't look at anything else, because anybody is judging, they're judging one of your solutions to this problem. The problem is large, you may come up with a different solution down the line. So just think it as a passing reference, and I wouldn't reach too much into it if I were one. I would look at other such competitions that are happening, and then other such challenges, and use this as a learning opportunity to say, okay, it's fine. And I didn't make the cut, but still I got some good learnings. Probably I'll try a different iteration of the solution, but I love the problem that I'm working on, so I'm going to win down the line.
Right. And also we have so many programs at NSRCEL. So WSP just one of them, and we run multiple cohorts. So don't get dejected. I mean, this is all for all the participants. We have multiple cohorts for across all the programs, and we have also mentoring sessions. I think a lot of them have been also putting down in the chat box that how do we go about mentoring. You can just go to our NSRCEL website and you can apply for mentoring and see how the mentors are able to guide you in the right direction of going about your problem and solution.
Yeah. So with that, I'd just like to end with a couple of things, right? So what I've seen is most people ask, hey, I have this idea. How do I go about this? And what should I be doing next? Right. So like generally I have seen two types of people. All right. There are people who analyze and then act, and then there are people who act and then figure out. Right. So the analyze people will say, hey, we'll do full analysis to say, will this work for me? Like, how do I put this together? They plan everything out and then go to the execution phase. Then the other set of people who just say, man, I've fallen in love with this problem. Hey, girl, come join me. Let's just do this. Then they go in and then they'll figure out, oh, man, how do we make this work? right? So for both of them, like I do have a couple of suggestions, right? So these are two books that I encourage people to look, depending on the kind of person you are. If you're an act and analyze person, please read this book called as Thinking in Bets. It helps you try and figure out, because essentially you're building a decision tree. So should I do this? Should I not do this? You're making all analysis and then finally you zero in on something and then going. So this definitely helps, right? And then there are other people who just act and then try to figure out how to make it work. So Phil Knight writes a very, very amazing memoir where Phil Knight is the founder of Nike. He talks about, probably if you read through the book, I'll not give up too much, but you'll start realizing that Nike failed numerous times before it succeeded. But it was just the dogged perseverance that, hey, I'm going to make this work, essentially made it work, right? So this would be my suggestions. Please do give it a read when you get time. And in case you have any questions, you can find me here. And it was pretty happy that, hey, I'm pretty happy that all of you were able to take time out on a Friday afternoon to come listen to me. And if there could be anything that I could do to be of help, I'll be happy to do. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pradeep. Aarti, do you have any closing comments for our participants?
Yeah, I just want to again reiterate that there are about 600 business idea evaluations. The score is getting uploaded. It will probably happen by tomorrow. Regarding Lean Canvas and video pitch, we have started uploading the data, and hopefully by Saturday or Sunday, we'll complete that activity. And early next week, you will start receiving your certificate. Those who are selected will receive emails separately about the selection. And as a process, those who are not selected for the second round, we will also reach out to you through email so that you are aware. Only thing I would say is, please, when we are sending announcement, make sure that it's not going to your spam folder, because some of you miss out this communication. And we also posted in our Telegram group. So make sure you watch out for these communications. And hopefully we complete all this between this weekend and early next week. Yeah, that's about it. Again, thank you so much, Pradeep, for this session. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. It took us about 5-10 minutes to even understand, the speed at which you went.
I'm sorry about that.
After that, I think it really got better.
Yeah, so, and it was quite relatable. The examples were so unique, and it was really helpful for all of us. Yeah.
Yes, definitely helpful. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You guys have a nice weekend and happy Dasara. Bye.
Yes, bye.
Bye.